group. Our institute, RKGIT Pharmacy, was established in year 2004 under the aegis of AKTU Lucknow. Its B Pharma course has recently got NB accreditation. About KINAPSE. KINAPSE is a multinational life sciences consulting company working with the top leading pharmaceutical organization. Team of experts at KINAPSE work relentlessly to improve the health and lives of millions of people around the world. We are really privileged to have experts from the industry of this repute with us. Thank you and welcome to all the speakers. Keeping in view of the tremendous scope of clinical trials and medical writing, this SDP has been designed to provide students a complete understanding of skills required for writing clinical study reports, as well as various clinical trial, regulatory, and other scientific documents. We will be having one session daily for 4 days, in which experts from different departments of the industry will apprise us of scope of medical writers and how they work closely with the clinical researchers and regulatory affairs. This SDP will start with inaugural session by Ms. Pooja Fogart, our chief guest today, Vice President KINAPSE. Other speakers of this SDP are Ms. Sonali Parmar, Associate Director, Bhavna Nanda Sinha, Senior Manager, Ravi Kiran Jogaish, Senior Manager, Shalini Dwivedi, Director, Development Operations, and also convener of this SDP. Dear speakers, it is an honor and privilege to have you with us today. Now I request all the participants to post their queries on the chat box. Queries will be taken at the end of the session on each day. I hope all the participants have some takeaways from this skill development program. Now I would request Dr. Monica Sachdeva, Principal RKGIT Pharmacy and convener of the SDP, to deliver welcome address. Ma'am, thank you.
Thank you, Gitika. A very good morning to all present here with us today. I feel very honored to have the privilege of welcoming our eminent guests from KINAPSE, Ms. Pooja Fogart, Vice President, Ms. Sonali Parmar, Associate Director, Ms. Bhavna Nanda, Senior Manager, Mr. Ravi Jogai, Senior Manager, Ms. Shalini Dwivedi, Director, Development Operations, and all our distinguished participants. Continuing with this learning through our series of webinars, we have today organized a skill development program on clinical trials and medical writing in collaboration with KINAPSE. We all know that there exists a huge gap between the industry and academia, and as per AICTE, very few students are employable after they finish their graduation after 4 years. So we at RKGIT, we have been sending our students regularly for industrial training, for hospital training, industrial visits. And this skill development program is another small step forward in this direction to bridge the gap between the industry and the academia. I'm highly thankful today to Ms. Pooja Fogart, Vice President KINAPSE, who agreed to our request for this skill development program and helped us to organize this program. I am thankful to you, madam, and I wholeheartedly welcome you today. I highly acknowledge the efforts of Ms. Shalini Dwivedi, Director Operations, and also the convener of this program, in chalking out the details, rather minute details of today's program. Thank you very much, Shalini. I welcome you today to this program. I am highly thankful to all our eminent speakers from the KINAPSE who will be with us for the next 3 days and will apprise us, will share their knowledge with their expertise with all of us. I welcome you all. And I sincerely hope that by the end of this 4 days program, the students will have an idea what the industry wants from them and how they could update and prepare themselves for different roles in this industry, especially today what we are dealing with, the clinical trials and medical writing. And we as faculty members can help, support, and prepare our students accordingly. And this will be, I think, a win-win situation for all our stakeholders. So with all these words, I, on behalf of all of us at RKGIT, wholeheartedly welcome our eminent guests from KINAPSE and all our distinguished participants. I wish the success of this program and wish you all well. Take all precautions and stay safe. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now I take privilege to introduce our guest today, Ms. Pooja Fogart. Ms. Pooja Fogart is Vice President and Head of Development Operations at KINAPSE, a seniors health company. Pooja Fogart brings a unique breadth of operational experience, global leadership, and technical expertise, establishing KINAPSE, a seniors health company, as a global market leader in clinical trial disclosure. Currently, Pooja is leading Development Operation Group, where she is responsible for clinical trial disclosure and medical writing services, program excellence, and adds value to the client and the patient they serve. She has over 17 years of experience in the life science industry with 10 years in clinical trial disclosure and transparency. Pooja's career started in the pharmaceutical industry as a PhD in microbiology and thereafter moving to a service industry with roles of increased responsibility across several areas. Pooja is recognized externally Pooja is recognized externally as a global thought leader in clinical trial disclosure and has presented at or chaired sessions at several national and international conferences. She recently delivered a KINAPSE webinar on plain language summaries attended by over 100 industry leaders. She is very well versed with various regulations and is an active member of the DIA community and several other working groups. She has several international publications in peer-reviewed journal and has also won several awards and fellowships at the national level. Welcome, ma'am. Now I request ma'am to please join us and deliver her inaugural session.
Thank you, Gitika. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So good morning to all of you. I would really like to welcome all the participants to the 4-day virtual conference on clinical research and medical writing. I am really honored to be invited to inaugurate this conference and would like to thank the Goel Institute of Technology for the same. So as I think Gitika and Monica mentioned earlier, these type of initiatives really help in reducing the gap between industry and students and helps to bring them closer. And I'm really very supportive of these initiatives. So before I share my views on the program, I would also like to let you know about our company, KINAPSE. KINAPSE Limited, it provides leading services to life sciences organizations that includes all the pharmaceutical industry, biotechnology industries, and we have also been working very closely with different global regulators, whether it is FDA or EMA. KINAPSE offers services in the areas of medical writing and medical information and clinical trial disclosure. And I'm sure as the topic is would cover some aspects of it, so this would be of interest to most of the students. Our company also provide services in pharmacovigilance and drug safety as well as regulatory affairs. So KINAPSE as a company was founded in 2005. And when we started off, we started with our headquarters in the UK and office in US. And at the moment in India, we have offices in Gurugram as well as Bangalore. As of August 20th, 2018, KINAPSE Limited now operates as a subsidiary of Seniors Health. I'm not sure if you would have heard of Seniors Health, but it is one of the top 3 leading clinical research organization, in brief CRO, with over 24,000 employees and offices worldwide. So coming to the initiatives, I'm really supportive of this initiative. And when I looked at the program focuses on clinical research, medical writing, and career options in the industry. So I would first like to begin with talking on clinical research. And I cannot emphasize enough on the importance of clinical research in bringing medicines to the world, especially as you realize more so the importance during the times of COVID-19, when the entire world is really looking at pharma to come up with either the treatment to cure COVID or a vaccine for its prevention. In fact, I would also like to share with all of you that Seniors, which is a parent company, is currently involved in supporting 150 clinical trials related to COVID right now. And in fact, within KINAPSE as well, and within my group, we are currently supporting with processing information of COVID-19 trials. And we have been innovative to speed up the processes to bring the information out in the public domain. In fact, I feel very proud of sharing that all the speakers in this whole program from today until end of 20th August, they have been associated with processing of data on COVID trials. And I really feel proud of my entire team in their role in helping the industry and the world in their fight against coronavirus. Now, coming to the next important aspect of the program, which is career options, and I'm sure most of you would be very interested in knowing more about it. And I think there is a session later in the week on this, but I would also like to touch upon various different roles in clinical development in which you would have an opportunity to grow your career in. So if I talk about a parent company, Seniors, which is into running clinical trials, there are hundreds of different roles within Seniors alone, from working at clinical sites to support trials. And there are roles which are office-based, involving analysis of data, working as medical writers, supporting with writing different types of documents. And there are also roles on the commercial side, helping with the launch of product through sales representative, or working in consulting to help clients develop their product strategies, or helping them with keeping their products on the market. So I just want to let you know that there are so many opportunities in the industry for you to take on various roles, and there are so many diverse roles. In addition, what I've seen in my journey, that there are also opportunities to move across different roles in your career in pharma. In fact, I started my journey as a research scientist, moved on into my career as a medical writer, and now I'm leading the service line. So this is how diverse it can get. Now, talking about my group specifically, I have more than 100 medical writers in my group who support with writing various types of regulatory documents. And they could be any documents ranging from clinical study reports, narratives, protocols. My group also supports with writing scientific communication, like writing publications, which we call in the industry as manuscripts, writing with abstracts, posters. The writers in my group also work in the area of clinical trial disclosure, which is very close to my heart because this is an area which I helped set up from scratch in the company. And this area really brings in more transparency as it helps in bringing information out in the public domain. Our group is also involved in not only delivering these types of work, my group has also been involved in global thought leadership, speaking at conferences like these in India as well as globally. which brings me to the agenda for these 4 days. When I went through the agenda, and I think Shalini has been quite involved in framing the agenda, working with the Rajkumar Goel group, as well as the speakers, to come up with the topics, which I think have been very carefully chosen, keeping the benefit of the audience at the forefront. And as you will see, the day starts with Sonali, who will be speaking on drug development today, followed by sessions on medical writing and trial transparency by Bhavna. There will also be, of course, I briefly touched on the possible roles in the industry, but there is a dedicated session that will focus on career options and personality development by Ravi, and then Shalini will take you through different departments of clinical research. So I think all in all, this will give you a holistic picture of what you should know to pursue your career further in the industry. All the presents are extremely knowledgeable in their areas, and I'm extremely proud of their journey in clinical research. I would also like to share with you, and I think this would be of interest to you, because all the presenters, they had a similar starting point in academia. All of them, they had a life sciences degree, and when they started, they worked in different companies, and at the moment they are of course working in the same company in my group at KINAPSE, in the same industry, but all of them fulfill very different roles. And despite starting in the same place, their careers have developed very differently, and they have all of them have been very successful in this career. So in the end, I would really like to thank everyone again for inviting me for the opening speech. And I really would like to encourage all the students to get as much as possible from this session, and wish you all the best. I can only I'm not sure how much I can emphasize, but this is such a growing area. There are lots and lots of opportunity, and if you pursue and if you get the right direction, like through sessions like these, I think you can find the right opportunities to grow in your career. So thank you, everyone. With that, I will hand it back to the organizers. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Pooja ma'am, for sparing your valuable time for us today. This forum is extremely privileged to have the bliss of the experience of such a magnitude. Though we would love to see you virtually, but I hope that we will meet soon physically once these conditions normalizes. Now, I take privilege to introduce first speaker of this skill development program, Ms. Sonali Parmar. Ms. Sonali Parmar is Associate Director, Clinical Trial Disclosures at KINAPSE. Ms. Sonali Parmar has a total 16 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare systems, ranging from research and development, regulatory and medical writing fields. She completed her M.Pharmacy from Punjab University, Chandigarh, and is currently working as Associate Director in Clinical Trial Disclosure Team at KINAPSE. She has also worked with HCL Technologies, Jubilant Organosis Limited, and Panacea Biotech. Currently at KINAPSE, Sonali's key assignments include project management, client management, and business development. Her professional qualities include offering strong administrative and cross-functional collaborative skills to provide teams with support and guidance to surpass expectations. Now I request and I welcome Sonali ma'am on this forum. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. And thank you so much for the warm welcome, everybody. A very, very good morning to all of you. Today, the morning weather was very nice, I would say, here. There were clouds and the weather was a little cool. Now it's like sunshine. So I hope today the session also goes cool and bright and sunshine. And it gives you opportunities to all of you, I would say, all the students who have joined. I can see many students who have joined, and there are about 69 participants that I can see there. Geetika ma'am,
All students would love to see you.
okay, sure. I was about to say that I can switch on my video.
Yes,
The only thing is, the only thing is that sometimes there is a internet issue, right, due to the video streaming. So I never wanted to have that. And I mean, it's great. It's really great talking to you all. So without wasting any moment, let's get started. I have a PPT with me. It's like 30 slides, but then I would love to get the questions right in front, just to consider the time here. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. So where do I go for the sharing of the screen?
Ma'am, you can share screen from the...
Okay, let me just have a look. Yes. Let me know if my screen is visible. I think I can switch off
Yes,
the video for the time being. Yeah.
No, ma'am, yes, it is visible.
Okay, perfect.
You can make it full screen, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm just turning it to full screen. Let me know.
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So, as everybody said, so we are starting with the first session, and I hope that whole of this week for all of you is a good learning experience talking to all of us here who are working at KINAPSE, and we feel privileged to talk to you about what we are doing and how can your career progress whilst we have also seen the progression when we were students, and then we went into organizations and changed roles, as Pooja was mentioning. So just moving ahead with what I have as the content for you, and I'm sure many of you are already knowing the content. So it would be good if you can just come up with as many questions as possible. We'll be going through a little bit of introduction of clinical research, trials, what is drug discovery, what is drug development, what are the phases of drug development, where does the medical writing field fall in, what is regulatory writing, what is the difference between regulatory writing, medical writing. There's a thin layer. And then finally the conclusion, and if time permits, I have a small quiz also for all of us, so that at least I understand whatever I'm trying to tell you here has been taken in, has been digested by all of you. Okay, so with that we start with the introduction. So introduction of drug discovery, which means identification of candidates, their synthesis, their characterization, their screening, and then assays for therapeutic efficacy. Now, that's the basic research, which actually involves the understanding of different disease pathways so that we can characterize a new drug molecule. So in pharmaceutical industry, basically because I am from formulation and development, that was the first step when I started my career, right? Preparation of the tablets and capsules and formulations. So we had understood the term API. So what is API? That is active pharmaceutical ingredient. So this is the start. The drug discovery means the start of an active pharmaceutical ingredient. That particular molecule, which will develop into a new drug and that can bring in the benefits to the society in terms of the treatments, in terms of new medicines that can be available to different people. Now, how that API gets transformed into drug product. So API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, mixed with other excipients, it is formulated into a formulation and then it will move into the market. So that's the journey that we are going to study. First is the target identification. So that's the major first step in the drug discovery, which will involve the identification of the target receptor. So basically, if we look at bioinformatics, so you might have heard about bioinformatics technology. Their methodology actually helps us to identify some potential targets. So when I say potential targets, I mean to say these are active pharmaceutical ingredients. These are those targets whose validation would be done, and they would be identified and carried on in a number of processes which will allow them to get screened in from the thousand of the compounds. So that single compound, which will be called as a hit compound, which will demonstrate the required activity, will be screened. And there are n number of things that happen. So there is a target for the therapeutic intervention. It could be the receptors, the proteins, the DNA, the RNA. And once that hit, or which I call as a suitable target, is achieved, then we validate it. So that's what is called target identification, validation, the very initial baby step for the drug discovery. Then we move on to the drug development. So that's the discovery part, and it's not over in one slide. Let me tell you, it's a huge process. So it is validation, it's discovery. So that is an enormous effort made by the scientists. Then we move on to the development of the drug. So development or the preclinical development, what's that? Many of the pharmaceutical companies would say that you are taking that new chemical entity, which is also called as NCE, lead through different stages to allow it to be tested in the human clinical trial. So it is going through different stages. So what are those stages, and where, as medical writers, as regulatory writers, how we fit in those stages? So that's one learning that I want everybody should take away from this session. So these are the major stages. We all understand there is a preclinical testing, there is a testing phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and we also understand that developing this new drug will take about 15 years, and it is very, very expensive. So it can cost to like USD 1 billion. So it's very expensive, all these steps. And with all these steps, there are certain things that are being tested. There are certain analyses that are being carried out, and those data. So that's where the first step starts as a medical writer, as a regulatory writer. So those data, they are being analyzed, they are being put into standardized formats by the medical writers. So we will go through the stages, we will go through the applications that we give to the different regulatory organizations, and then side by side, I'll keep on explaining you what are the roles that a medical writer can play at different stages of the clinical research. Or in other terms, we might say different phases in the clinical research. Now, first is a preclinical phase. So this, I think up till now, all of us are clear that this is a non-human studies. So what do we get from these studies? We get the information of safety, we get the information of efficacy in order to begin a particular trial. As students, if I remember that I had learned about efficacy, safety somewhere in my pharmacology class in B.Pharm second year. But still, if anybody is not clear, let me clarify. So safety, what is the difference between safety and efficacy? Efficacious means whether the drug is doing what it is intended for. That's called efficacy. Safety is when the drug is showing certain untoward incidents or adverse events, and that can be taken care of. The drug is safe so that we can take care of those untoward events that the drug can bring about. So that's the safety testing. And this is a phase when the pharmacodynamic studies are done, pharmacokinetic studies are done, tox studies are done, ecological studies are done. So all these studies will be done in this phase. So what is a phase 0? Before the so first phase was preclinical. We start from there, which is in non-humans, and then comes phase 0. Phase 0 was an idea that was coined by US FDA and the Pharmaceutical Research Manufacturers of America. Now, this is also known as microdosing phase. Why it's known as microdosing? Because very few human volunteers are provided with less than 1% of therapeutic dose of the investigational drug. So what is this investigational drug? So this can be in the form of a powder, that new drug, that new chemical entity. It can be in the form of a formulation. It could be a solution, just the API, that is the active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is combined with one of the excipient just to provide it as a dosage. And in this phase 0, we only ensure the absence of toxic effects. Why we are doing this phase 0? Just to speed up the development, because that is very important for us. It will never replace phase 1, but we just get a preliminary data, just a basic data on pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics. Or we also select some promising leads that hit, which I explained right in the beginning, that hit NCE. That is also something that we get here. Then we move on to phase 1. So what's phase 1? Now these are like first in human studies. So usually conducted in healthy human volunteers. So guys, when I say usually conducted in healthy human volunteers, why do I add the word usually? Know why? Because it may be that in some trials, the patients are involved in phase 1. So if I give you example of an oncology, so the trials that are used to study the cancer drugs, right? They will involve patients. So that's why we say that phase 1 usually are conducted in healthy volunteers. These preliminary studies actually investigate the safety, they investigate the tolerability of the compound and its fate in the body. So when we say fate in the body, I'm sorry, I'm moving back. When we say fate in the body, we do understand that we are talking about the pharmacokinetics of the drug, right? So, and we also get to know about its effect, that is the effect of the drug on the body. One is what will happen to the drug, which is pharmacokinetics, and what will happen to the body, which is pharmacodynamics. So these studies also give us the indication of dose range of the drug. What would be the dosage range? So that's also an indicator. I would not say that you get the complete data from here, but it's just an indication. And these studies sometimes, and some of the NCEs, the new chemical entities, they are also involved to bring out the drug interaction studies. So there would be two drugs, drug-drug interactions. There would be drug and excipient. So those kind of studies, those kind of impacts that can be also brought out in phase 1 studies. Now, after the phase 1, the phase 1 is done. We talked about like how many volunteers are there, very few volunteers. We do the safety, we do the PK, we come to know about the safety of the drug, we come to know about the pharmacokinetics of the drug, and a little idea about the pharmacodynamics as well. After that, what happens that the sponsor, so who is a sponsor? Sponsor is all the big giant pharmaceutical companies. They are termed as the sponsors. They are the ones who are actually preparing the new, they are discovering the new chemical entities and they're working on them. So they are the parent companies for all these drugs. So these sponsors, they would like to go for an application because they have some data collated at the end of the phase 1 trials. So once they have that data, that report which they have, which would also comprise of some lab data, wet lab. So with they have a laboratory where the data is conducted. So they would have that data from the preclinical studies, from the phase 0 studies, and from phase 1, they would have some data on the human trials. So that data they will take and they will put in the IND application. And the important thing is that if the FDA does not approve this IND application within 30 days, then these sponsors can begin the trials further in the humans. So they can go ahead and start beginning in the humans. I won't go into detail into this process, but I'm sure because these PPTs will be shared with all of you, you can actually go through this process. So this is actually a regulatory process from FDA. So that's how different sections within the IND application are required. Medical section, chemistry section, pharmacology, statistical, all these sections are required. And I would just, why I wanted to just show you this whole flow chart, because safety review is something where comes, again, the inputs of a medical writer. Data collation is where comes the inputs of a medical writer. So this data collation could be from the preclinical data and also from the phase 0. Then we move on to phase 2. Now, phase 2 trials are the ones where, you will have predominantly carried out these trials within patients. And there would be like 100 to 250 patients. And these studies may be placebo controlled. So what is a placebo? Placebo is anything which is not having the active pharmaceutical ingredient. So it's not having that active moiety, that active chemical entity which could produce any effect, whether it's positive or negative, right? So when a person is given placebo, then those patients or those healthy human volunteers are actually given only excipients without any effect. And when we say that the trials are placebo controlled, means we are carrying out a comparison. So we will give to a group of people the medicines which have the drug, which have the active ingredient in them, active moiety, and to another group we would give placebo. And we will take the data from both the groups. So that's kind of comparative analysis as well. And this phase 2 is done to assess efficacy, safety, tolerability of the drug versus the placebo. So basically, we will try to understand the efficacy fully from here, though we know that some part of safety data and side effects, these are also evaluated from phase 2. Ultimate aim is we get the ultimate dose of the drug in the phase 2 trials. Phase 3 trials. Now, phase 3 trials are always conducted in large number of patients, and they are for the effectiveness of the new drug, and even monitor the side effects compared to the drug in the market. So that's important. So we have to know about the effectiveness of the new drug and how do you compare it to the drug which is already available. So because this is new chemical entity, you might question back, okay, this is new chemical entity. So what I'm understanding here is that this is going to be a treatment for any new disease, right? It could be a different way. The mechanism of action of this drug could be differently treating a particular type of disease for which we already have a drug in the market. So it could be a new use of that particular drug, which is going to actually treat the disease. So that ways we can carry out the comparison. Just I will pause here because it is important for us to also understand what are generic drugs and what are new chemical entities. So generic drug products or medicines, when we say, these are the ones which are not the innovator ones. When we say innovator means something which is new, it's new in the market, it's a new chemical entity, the drug discovery has taken place for a particular disease, this is a new drug moiety that will produce an effect. When we say generic, so generic means already there is a known drug. However, in order to reduce the price of that known drug, similar kind of moieties are used which are having the similar safety efficacy effects, and they are produced on a low price. Now how they'll be produced on a low price? Because they will have similar kind of efficacy and safety, so you can actually do away with some of the clinical trial phases in those drugs. So those drugs are generic drugs, and for them phase 3 is very important because the comparison can be done. So as you do the comparison, you will come to know whether your generic drug, which is not an innovator drug, that will be behaving similar to the innovator when it is given for a particular treatment. Coming back to phase 3. So phase 3, we understand that it is for the effectiveness, for knowing the effectiveness of a new drug, and will also additionally let us know the monitoring of the drug against the drug which is already there. Plus, to gather additional information regarding the safety data, the use of the drug in the populations, because you see the number of the patients have increased here. Normally, these phase 3 trials, they are like randomized and double blind. So when you say randomized, so randomized means that basically you give a trial which is aiming to reduce the certain type of biasness. So it is based on the study. So these trials, they are having a study design. So when they are prepared before that, and I'll talk to you about a document which is prepared for them that is called a protocol. It is called a study protocol. So within the study protocol, you will have a design of the study. So you have all the planned parameters over there, right? So when you have the design and just explaining you on the randomized trials, so that design in the randomized trials is talking about randomly assigning the participants of the trial, patients of the trial, into an experimental group or control group. And what is a control group? Control group is placebo. We consider placebo as a control group, and there is an experimental group where the drug is given. So randomization is another type of trial. It's a type of trial where study design is such that we randomly distribute the drug in the control group and in the we randomly distribute the participants basically in the control group or for the experimental group. So that's all about the phase 3. And phase 3 trials generally exclude specific groups of patients. Now, this is important. So that there is an exclusion criteria. So they will exclude the patients with a renal impairment. Normally, we don't see these things written in our book. So these are some of the things that, due to our experience, we have seen that patients with renal impairment would not be used in the phase 3 trials. So that's about phase 3. And yes, I did talk about the additional data that's required in phase 3. Then we talk about registration dossier. Okay, after phase 3, now we understand that new medicines, they require to be marketed. And in order to be marketed, right, in the whole world, if they are to be marketed in US, then they have to be registered there. They have to be approved by FDA. If they are marketed in European Union, they have to be approved by EMEA. If it's to be marketed within India, then DCGI is the approval authority. So how do you get that approval? That's where there is an important role of a medical writer, and that is a document which is called dossier. Now, dossier is not a single page document. It has a lot of things in it, remember. So this dossier will have a complete data, safety, efficacy, any comparison, any kind of bioequivalent studies that have been done. All the data will go inside this registration dossier. And here comes the need of a medical writer. So a scientist in a wet lab has done a lot of experiments. He moves his new chemical moiety to the clinical trials. Clinical trials, again, done in animals, then in humans, and then finally, the sponsor or the pharmaceutical organization wants to market it. Before marketing, they have lots and lots and lots of data. Now, who will analyze that data? Who will compile that data into standardized formats? It's the regulatory and medical writers, right? Now, medical writers, what they do is they put that data in a plain language form. If I'm going to explain you in a very high level simplicity, they're going to put that data into standardized format and send it to sponsor for screening, and then the sponsor is going to check it, review it, send it back, and then submit it. Very simple, isn't it? But it's not that simple. And as I go through further, I'll tell you what are the documents on which we work. I might not be able to tell you the data that we actually use because of confidentiality issues, but that's something which is important to note, that this registration dossier will have different sections which have to be filled in, and where the sponsors will require our cooperation and support from the medical writers in medical writing team, in regulatory writing team. Now, after this registration dossier is complete, it also involves a new drug application. Remember, we're talking about new chemical entities. So there's going to be a new drug application. So this application will contain all the information gathered during the preclinical phase to the phase 3. And this NDA can run to thousands and thousands of pages. It can take 2 to 3 years for FDA to actually review them. It's so big, huge document. Again, there is a process to it. Not only a process to it, but also there are specific fields. So we should not worry about the process because that is sponsor's headache, that is pharmaceutical organization headache. Only thing is we should understand what is the process. We should know the background before we create any document, right? Now, what are the sections like medical, pharmacology, chemistry, microbiology, stats, biopharmaceuticals? All these sections would be reviewed by the FDA. So this process is only from the FDA that I have taken. Again, similar kind of process is also followed in EMEA region, that is European Medicine Agency. Now, once these data have already gone, the next step would be manufacturing that particular NCE, that particular important drug to large scale manufacturing. In many cases, companies must build a new manufacturing facility or at least reconstruct an old one. And then, yes, of course, we know that each and every facility must meet those strict FDA guidelines and GMP, which we call as good manufacturing practices. So that's the next step of the trials. Now we move on to the phase 4. So before moving to phase 4, we have seen that there was an NDA application, and also we saw that there's a large-scale manufacture, so which makes us understand the point that we are moving to phase 4 means huge populations. So once this registration dossier is approved, it's only after that, several activities will still continue to be tested. What are those activities? It will be the efficacy, it would be the additional safety data, also additionally the pharmacoeconomics data that is also required. So other than that, there would be so many important reports regarding the safety. So all this data, this is required to go within this trial. We have this data previously, but we need the additional data. So that is generated through phase 4, just to note that these drugs are safe and efficacious for a larger population. Again, these are some aspects that are being done in the phase 4 trials. We have it will apply to all aspects of investigation following the NDA approval. So once your approval is done, the sponsor is liable to get investigator. And then whatever claims the sponsor has made for safety efficacy, that will be reviewed and they'll be approved by FDA as well. And immediate reports on any unexpected side effects, injury, toxic, any allergic reactions or failure of the drug will be also noted down during the phase 4. So phase 4 is again very, very important. Now there is a crucial step in the trials. What's that crucial step? We have compiled the data. Till now we were talking about FDA. So when you say FDA, we are talking about US region. When you say DCGI, we are talking about approval in India region. But then if it is a novel entity, it has to go to the entire world, right? Now, when it has to go to the entire world, then the data which is there in the registration dossier should also be customized to the form that can be given to the rest of the world apart from US or India or European Union. So that dossier is customized how these trials are conducted at different sites, and they will have the data collated. And all the health authorities which are present in these areas, in different areas of the world, these health authorities are also submitted applications. Before the start of the trials, these applications are registered on their sites. They're the health authority sites, and that's called registration of trials. And that's the first step where KINAPSE plays a very important role. We register the trial not only in the US in clinicaltrials.gov, but also at Udrocity site, and these are public sites. They are fully available, readily available on Google. So if you want to Google them, you can actually have clinicaltrials.gov, and KINAPSE is involved in the registration of these trials, plus also registering the trials in the rest of the world. Then this was about crucial step in all the trials, which is very important right in the beginning. Plus also it's not that the regulatory authorities are not thinking about some cases when they need fast track approval, when they need expanded access programs, right? So if they are needing a fast track approvals, obviously they would work with the sponsor so that they can bring out the promising drugs into the world by doing away with phase 2 and phase 3 trials. They are called as treatment INDs. Also, on the other hand, fast track approvals will involve quick approvals, wherein the FDA inspectors, the FDA reviewers, the European reviewers are sitting day in, day out, and they don't want to actually waste time in carrying out the review process. So they do it in a speedily format. So those are fast track approvals. On the other hand, you have expanded access programs or treatment INDs where treatment is very important. Like if I relate it to the today's condition, it is very important that we get the expanded access programs. We get into the treatment trials, the trials which are producing the treatment. So here it's a very old example that has been quoted, but we understand during the COVID scenario, this pandemic scenario, the clinical research is on toes to bring the drugs to the market, the treatment drugs, not only on the novel entities like vaccines, novel entities to be administered as a form of vaccine, but also as a treatment drug. Then comes the important part for which all of you must be interested. So all this was theoretical. I tried to relate it to what we're doing there, but then without understanding these basics, I would say there is no way that you can get through the medical writing field. As a good medical writer, as an outstanding medical writer, which you need to be because you're working with the pharmaceutical companies, big pharmaceutical companies, you need to understand those basics then. So what are the various documents which are produced by us as medical writers or regulatory writers? So these are clinical study protocols, drug safety or pharmacovigilance documents, informed consent forms, clinical study reports. So all of you might have a question like, still, these documents, how they are prepared, what are the sections entailed, right? There would be many questions. So on a very high level, I can say that these documents are not only, you are not the sole preparer for these documents. You will have a study clinician, you would have a statistician, you would have a drug safety representative, a person from the regulatory affairs of the sponsor to provide you some kind of sources, some kind of source documents to write these documents. Okay, so what is a clinical study protocol? What is a protocol? It's just a plan, a stepwise plan, right? So when you add clinical study to it, it would be something that is describing the assessments, it is describing the processes, it is describing the requirements for that study so that it can run in a smooth fashion. So it's just a stepwise plan of that study. But they want it written because this is something that is to go in their dossier. They want it written to conduct for the conduct of the trial, right? So here where the medical writers, they play a very important role. Then there are drug safety PV documents. Now, during the development of any new drug, any new chemical moiety, and followed by its approval, safety is actually monitored very closely. You have to monitor the safety, right? That's very important. This will actually necessitate the production of specific documents reporting on the safety, like safety update reports, periodic safety update reports, any kind of risks. So they are also taken into consideration. What were the risks during the conduct of the trial, or what could be the risks? So those risk management plans, they all come under the drug safety PV reporting. Then informed consent forms. So if I talk about informed consent forms, what are these? Before, the patients or healthy volunteers, the clinical study volunteers, they undergo any of these study related procedures, they must provide an informed consent, or it's a kind of form, an assent or an assent, by their parents, by the caregivers, in which case when the trials are for the pediatric populations or any vulnerable patient. So those forms, they are called in the informed consent form. These will actually provide the clinical study participants with details about the nature of the study. What's the study going to be? And what would be the anticipated benefits and risks? An important part in these consent reports is that it should clearly explain that they can draw their consent at any time. They can withdraw that anytime. So these are another kind of, documents that medical writers prepare. And then, of course, by the end of the trial, you have all the data with you. You have all the analyzed statistical data. You have safety data. So that's prepared at the end of the study. So it's a complete record of all the methods, what has been utilized in performing that trials, what are the results, everything in the CSR. We call it as CSR clinical study report. So that's again where the writers play a very important niche role. Coming back to role in KINAPSE, so there are, as I told you, medical writer has a different roles. So when these study protocols are prepared and the trial is going to be conducted, within 21 days of first enrollment of the patient, we have to register the trial at US site, which is called clinicaltrials.gov. And for that, what we do is we take the protocol as a document and we prepared a standardized format document that has to go onto clinicaltrials.gov. It has to be registered. This is called registration of trials. That's what I explained earlier. That's also one part of KINAPSE, which is done in the clinical trial disclosure piece of KINAPSE. The other part is the results. So once you have this clinical study reports, which forms the basis of our source document, from here the data is taken out. It's not analyzed, we don't interpret, we just take it out, put it in a standardized format, make it legible, understandable as a standalone document, and then submit it onto the US sites, public sites, clinicaltrial.gov, or onto UTRA-CT. And also to all the different health authorities that I mentioned here in the crucial step in trials, different health authorities of the world. So all this is done by KINAPSE. So that's the disclosure piece that KINAPSE does. Again, initially, many of you might have recalled that I said there is a very thin lining between regulatory writers and medical writers. And where that thin lining falls is if you see this triangle. So when I say CTD here, this is a common technical document. And this is one particular format that has been given as a mandatory format by European Union, Japan, and also by FDA. This format means this is a dossier format, right? Now here comes both the skills of a medical writer and the skills of a regulatory writer. So when you talk about regulatory writer, the regulatory writer would take the lab data, they would take the formulation data, how the tablet is prepared, what are the excipients, what is the process, why this excipient does not work, what is stability, everything would be closed in the quality module. So here comes the regulatory writers. Medical writers will take care of the clinical summary. So clinical summary is actually a factual narrative. Honestly speaking, it's a narrative. It's a kind of brief summary, factual. It is evidence based of all the clinical information within this. So whatever clinical information you have that has an evidence, so that is a clinical summary. And it will have like bioinformatics, it will have pharmacology, it will have efficacy, it will have safety, everything. So here comes the role of the medical writers. Again, preparation of overview, clinical overviews. So clinical overviews actually summarize the data which are provided in the clinical summary documents. So they will actually give you clear cut, concise, clear conclusions, and they will also give you implications. And plus, importantly, this is very, very important for knowing the benefit risk analysis. So when anybody who has a very good experience in medical writing would be able to write this clinical overview after having a good amount of years of experience, because this document will involve analysis. Okay, so this is, I think, something which is already there in many of the syllabi. If I remember, we also used to study this in our regulatory subject. So this is something that everybody would have. Just that I wanted to touch base, like which are the areas where, you know, as a medical writer, as a regulatory writer, you can pursue your careers. Okay. Overall, we have talked about the documents, we have talked about everything, and I'm sure Bhavna is going to talk about like medical writing and career as a whole in medical writing. What would be the basic requirements there? I just wanted to touch upon like what is the basic process there. So you are a medical or a regulatory writer, you write a document or a draft, your team would be reviewing it internally, right? Internally, when I say, if I give you example of say KINAPSE, so we internally review it once, then it goes to the client side. So this swim lane over here is the client side, so it goes to the sponsor. Sponsor reviews it, tells us some edits, it comes back to us, and then finally approved. So this is the whole process that medical writer will keep on going into whole of his lifetime, through and through. So that's the role where the medical writer plays. So medical writer is a key person talking to the sponsor. Medical writer is a key person who is taking care of the source documents, key person to take care of the data is authentic and is taken from the source documents which are approved. So these are some of the things that Bhavna is going to take care, and plus also Ravi is going to take care about the career options there. So you will enjoy that session as well. Again, who employs the medical writers? I think that's the question of the day. Who are the ones who are going to employ us as a medical writer? So it's all the clinical research organizations, all the organizations which I termed as sponsor organizations or pharmaceutical companies, and also specialist medical writing companies. So there are specialist companies who are only working in scientific medical communications. Okay, they are very small, but they are working in only this area. So they are the ones who are also looking out. And finally, the conclusion, and I know this conclusion is taking care of all the trials, and we know that it takes about 10 to 15 years for a drug from investigation to market, and the cost is huge. There are newer techniques which are coming up, like biotechnology, bioinformatics, genomics, molecular biology. These are actually speeding up the process, and they are also actually important for target orientation. So they are helping us to move towards the target more, and leave away the rest of the part. Despite all this, there is a steady decline in the number of new drugs. Yes, of course, because I would say at this moment there's a decline because of this pandemic time that we're going on. But again, most of the other trials, I mean, other therapeutic areas, if we talk about, so they have been put on hold because the whole world is looking towards COVID. So every organization is, aligning their energies and their efforts towards uh, getting the treatment drugs for COVID-19, or even doing the analysis there. So that is one thing that I wanted to share. And with that, I finished. Thank you so much. I'm just wanted to see what's the time here. It's almost more than time that was required to speak.
It's okay, ma'am.
So I'm going to stop sharing. I had a couple of questions. Basically, that was a small quiz for everybody. But then maybe you can share the presentation with students and with all of the participants, and they can go through the quiz, and I can provide you the answers later. I hope that that's fine.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sure.
So,
thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for such an insightful presentation. I'm sure that this would enthuse our students to explore this area, and they must have been benefited in many ways. Now, with your permission, can we take queries, ma'am?
Yes, sure, please. And I can see a few queries on the chat box.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah.
You can take directly from there.
Yeah, I think it's first is from Vasu Chauhan and
yes, ma'am. He is our alumni participant.
Okay. So he is trying to ask me whether all participants are requested to share. Okay. If FDA does not approve the IND application within 30 days, sponsor is still allowed to proceed the trial to the next phase. Yes. Absolutely yes.
Another student participant, Avnish, ma'am wants to ask that
new, new drug development and new vaccine development is same, and the same process is followed in. That's a very good question actually. So vaccine development is a tricky one because the proteins are involved. Initial phase, I would say, till the drug discovery, everything goes same. But when you're talking about trials in the humans, it would take much more time because vaccines have to be induced and immunity has to be developed, right? I haven't worked myself in vaccines department at all. From the drug development, I would say it's completely different, and the total number of years are more in the case of vaccine production. Why? Because the trials take more time there, and the reason being the development of the antibodies for that vaccine. So that's the reason that I can understand. I hope I'm audible at the moment.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay. I hope I can answer that. I mean, that's fine. Who was that? Gitika?
Avnish. Yes.
Avnish. Yeah. Okay. Any other question anybody has can unmute and just ask me. And
ma'am, I have received one query from student participant.
Yeah.
He has asked that, as you told, that medical writers help sponsors in dossiers and data collation. So do freshers need some training for all these, or it will be provided by the industry once they join it?
So yes, so that's again, I would say, a very good question. So whenever we have freshers, there is a complete program which is called training curriculum for the freshers, which not only includes the technical part of it. So when we say technical, means we are training you on how to write the documents, but also it includes some of the skills that are required in writing the correct grammatical English, formatting of the document. So these are also some skills that KINAPSE invests time in. We do not believe that directly you will be just pushed on to a client work. We give some time there. We carry out all the training curricula, which is there in our training system, and it's regularly updated, let me assure you, so that you are also updated with the recent changes going on in the regulatory environment. So curricula is divided, as I told, on the basis of the writing skills. It's divided on the basis of the competency. It's divided on the basis of the core deliverable. So when I say core deliverable, on what project you are going and what are you going to deliver, then final piece will take care of that. So these are some of the, I would say, some of the pieces of this curricula that I would explain here at the moment. I mean, very high level.
So generally it is not fixed. It may vary depending upon the fresher and his skills.
So it's 6
Is
months.
it so, ma'am?
It's 6 months, Geetika. First 6 months that we give probation time.
Okay.
So for this first 6 months, we have a mentor given to the fresher so that the fresher feels comfortable and can ask any type of questions.
Okay.
Again,
Thank you, ma'am.
yeah, again, having said that, just wanted to add on that this a person who is just a fresher to the organization might not be acquainted to the type of work that we are doing, might not be acquainted to the industry norms, right? So this mentor actually makes that person come at ease in the organization, apart from the regular trainings that we have. So these trainings fall in different buckets, which will keep on going till 6 months. And then we have regular touch-up meetings with the individual to understand the progress. That's how it is.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Sure.
One more question is with me, ma'am. One student participant has asked that, as you told, that all the companies generally outsource these clinical trial studies as well as dossier formation.
Yeah.
Is there any companies, or are there any companies which themselves do these studies, or they make protocol themselves?
Yes. It's not all the companies would actually, outsource the work to others. That's one thing. A few companies have their own regulatory departments, own medical writers, right? They have regulatory affairs as a full-fledged department. So these companies would never outsource their work. So when you say outsource, means giving work to other CROs, right? So they would never do that. And they have their own medical writers doing these work. And that's there in the regulatory department. There are a few organizations which don't, I would say they don't get time to work on these, and especially when we are talking about registration of the protocols on some public websites. So those are some of the tasks that the sponsor organization feel overwhelmed doing them. They don't get time of doing them because they have the source document that has to be put in a standardized format and has to go onto a certain site. So that's area which KINAPSE is taking care, the disclosure area, where most of the sponsors would like to get the work done by outsourcing. I also wanted to clarify one thing. I think the question that was asked to me was about whether, if 30 days approval, within 30 days, if the approval is not given for the NDA. So I'm sorry, I wanted to say about the IND. So when it's not IND, it's the 30-day approval is not given for an IND application, then the sponsor proceeds. Whereas for NDA, you have to have the approval. That's the important step. So I hope I'm clear. I think somebody has asked me that question.
Yes, ma'am.
Earlier. Okay.
So thank you, ma'am. That's all for question answer session.
Sure, ma'am. And all of you, I request, I have my email ID and also a LinkedIn ID. So if you have any further questions, you can reach me out there. Thank you so much. Thank you to the RKGIT group for providing us opportunity to be here. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. So with your permission, now I propose a vote of thanks. Ma'am, can we start with the vote of thanks? So, I, Gitika Mehta, feel extremely privileged to convey a vote of thanks for this event. We would like to express our gratitude towards Ms. Pooja Fogart, Vice President KINAPSE, for her esteemed presence and sharing her experiences with all of us. Thank you, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time for us. We are also thankful to Ms. Sonali Parmar, Director at KINAPSE, for her energetic and knowledgeable session today. We hope that faculty members, students, whosoever attended this session must have been benefited in many ways. A special thanks to Ms. Shalini Dwivedi for being an instrumental in arranging this skill development program, and with thanks for the interaction with the industry people. We thank all our honored speakers for having accepted our invitation and for showering their enlightening words. We are thankful to all our participants for their keen interest and involvement in the lecture. We also remain grateful towards Shri Dinesh Goelji, Chairman, RKG Group of Institutions, Shri Akshat Goelji, Vice Chairman, RKG Group of Institutions, Dr. Lakshman Prasad, Director R&D, RKG Group of Institutions, for their continuous motivation and encouragement to all of us at RKGIT. I'm also thankful towards Dr. Monica Sachdeva, Principal RKGIT Pharmacy, for her strong leadership and for her continuous support to all of us at RKGIT Pharmacy. Last but not the least, I remain thankful towards my colleague, Mr. Abhinav Agarwal, Mr. Pankaj Sharma, Ms. Pooja Puri, Dr. Pavan Kumar, Mr. Jatin Gupta, and Mr. Hitesh for their technical and professional support for the smooth conduction of the program. I hope all of the participants must have enjoyed this session today. Thank you all once again. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am. Feedback link will be shared on the platforms on 4th day at the end of this skill development program. So, ma'am, we can have a click with you.
Yeah,
If
sure.
we can switch on a video for a quick snapshot.
Sure.
Monica, ma'am. And thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. So nice of you.